Anderson, and I work at Brix Bounty. And even though we know most everyone here, it might, for general good measure, maybe we could go around and say our names. And I'm interested to know what you're looking to take away from this workshop. I have some things planned, of course, but with this small group, we can cater it to your needs and questions. So if you could just say what you were hoping to get out of reusing garden space. So, you want to start?
Yeah, well, I'm a poor person. My name's Lisa Allen, but I'm a poor person to start with because I'm just here for general interest.
Great. Cool.
I'm Laura Miller-Donnelly. I have a plot here, and I guess what I want to learn is what I can plant now. Mm-hmm. And because we've had this workshop scheduled, I've kind of told myself, okay, there's this day where I'm going to plant some things again, so I have some stuff to plant that hopefully I can get in the ground today and learn how I should do it.
Cool.
I'm Marlene Holohan. I have a plot here and I garden at home, and I'm interested in this workshop because I'm about to yank up all my garlic and onions, and so anyways, I want ideas on what to replace it with.
I'm Mike Humphrey. I'm president of the gardens, and my wife has this plot here. I don't really garden myself, but I always come away from these things with information I never thought of, so that's what I'm here for.
I'm Bet Lowe, and I used to live at Eva's garden, and she had an amazing way to plant greens that you could pick something all year round, and I aspire to that.
And I'm Ben Raposa here at the gardens, and I would like to know what sort of things are best for direct seeding this time of year.
Great. Good. So, I didn't actually come up with the topic idea or the title of reusing garden space, but I really like it because it's as a subject, it provides a platform to talk about a lot of creative ways to use these growing spaces. As you may have gathered in other workshops, there's often a lot more creativity and spontaneity allowed in the garden as opposed to on the farm. And I was thinking about that just grammatically. The in the garden kind of suggests more of an immersion, with the gardener being part of the one with the plants and the bugs, whereas on the farm we generally say, it's more of like the farmer is separate, the farmer is doing things to the crops and to the land. So there's so much more opportunity with reusing garden space and gardening than on the farm. So my take on reusing garden space included the following topics: succession planting, fall and season extension, which these are kind of all related to what you guys were talking about. Some companion planting, but that's related to succession planting. Bed prep methods, and often no-till bed prep methods, cover cropping and fertility, of course, and then lastly seed saving. So all of those elements to me are part of this. So let's walk over to this plot that I'm working on. And if anyone has any questions, because we're such a small group, please feel free to just jump in or ask. So succession planting, I guess I came over here more of just like the comfortability of this space. Succession planting, it is, as the name suggests, planting different successions. Lettuce is probably my favorite example of that. This time of year at Brix Bounty Farm, we seed lettuce every week. And that's for a number of reasons. One, unpredictability of the upcoming fall season. You never know what it's going to be like. And then also, as the growing season ahead changes drastically, the speed at which things grow slows down drastically. So if you plant lettuce every week, now you won't actually be able to harvest every week. It'll kind of be drawn out by months and months. Elliot Coleman, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Elliot Coleman's book, he has excellent exact to the day schedules from when to plant and when to harvest based on a cold climate growing season.
And being a fertility expert.
Yeah, yes. So there's, yes, you can, I don't know if you guys are doing seeding at home into trays or cells and then transplanting, or if you're just planting seeds out here, but there are, lettuce is a great thing that you can keep planting, and obviously, depending if you're growing lettuce heads or lettuce mix, if it's a lettuce head, that's a one-time harvest, and so you want to make sure that you have something growing for the next night you want to have lettuce at your table. Lettuce mix, it's all lettuce, but we just kind of plant it differently. And if you guys know all this, you can say, yeah, we know, we can go on. But lettuce mix, we plant with closer spacing, and we harvest it when it's younger, and then we let it regrow, and you can keep harvesting it. So those are just different types of successions. This week, I also seeded Napa cabbage and broccoli and spinach just yesterday, and red Russian kale. You guys know what the red Russian kale is? It's like we had it at the Brix Bounty plot over the winter, and so these types of crops are the things that you can plant right now. Depending on, and that'll be the next topic, season extension, depending on what sort of additional infrastructure you're looking to invest in, there's a lot of things you can still plant. Obviously, the long season, warm climate loving stuff like the solanaceous peppers and tomatoes and cucumbers and eggplants, can't really have a succession of those right now. But the other part of succession planting is some basic crop rotation. If you have one thing growing, so if I have got, this is all peppers, except for the clover growing in the aisles, the parsley that the person before me planted, and I'm letting it go to seed so I can have parsley seed for next year, and this one sunflower. I probably wouldn't want to plant peppers in here the next year. There's different opinions on certain elements of crop rotation, but basically what you had growing there, you don't want to keep planting because it's going to deplete the soil of those minerals. And with pest and disease pressure, especially with brassicas, that's probably one of the main ones. We have a flea beetle problem here in this region, so the flea beetles, they lay their eggs in the roots, and so if you keep planting brassicas, that they're going to continue to flourish and grow, and then they'll get out of control. So crop rotation is another thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about succession planting. You kind of want to switch it up, and that's, yeah. Does anyone have any questions on that part somewhere? Okay. And then we'll have a nice example of what they did around the bend, but I guess I could talk about that in bed prep. So then season extension, there are a few items that I think are very almost essential, especially if you want to be harvesting all year, and that is the Agribon row cover. And you may have seen it, there isn't any of it around right now because it's so warm, but it's like the consistency of a dryer sheet, it's just a little thicker. And what I read was that adding one layer, well, that would be like, so in a greenhouse, if you have one layer, that's the equivalent of changing your climate 1.5 climates to the south, or 500 miles to the south in our case. So you can drastically increase the variety of what you can grow by adding some other structure. If you want to do like a little glass house, or people can use those water bottles or milk milk jugs or the big water tanks to add to the microclimate. But back, I'm digressing, the Agribon is an excellent investment, and it will last 2 or 3 years. And then also the metal hoops. So stuff like spinach and kale, and even possibly leeks, especially for the snowy months. Carrots, and some hardy lettuces. What am I forgetting? There's
I was wondering if turnips were.
turnips
It
would
was-
be all right. Yeah, turnips would be good. I've also seen people over winter the other brassica salad greens, like the spicy braising mix stuff. Those curly mizunas and other tatsoi. Thank you. Yes, Eva does a lot of tatsoi too. Those things are pretty winter hardy. So for the fall season extension, obviously including smart succession planting practices, but planning for what, when you want to harvest. So you want to make sure that you're on top of it and thinking about it now, because let's say you want some of the, you want to be eating this stuff in October, November, it would be much too late. And then, the acquisition of certain materials, Agribon, little wire hoops, and then possibly larger structures. You have a hoop house or a little greenhouse.
Right. Whatever you call
Yeah,
it.
whatever. Right. And we've potentially talked about getting a greenhouse for this garden, or
It's on the wish list.
it's on the wish list.
No
of
money's
course.
on the horizon.
But it's on the wish list. Yeah.
It'd be nice.
I have a
written
pipe bender now,
Oh,
Oh,
so
cool.
they're not that expensive to build if you do it yourself.
yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Cool. All right, so then companion planting, I almost debated about whether to put that in there or not, because it's included a lot in the other topics, but what I think of with companion planting is not necessarily, there are books out there that say certain plants release pheromones that are beneficial, or they release exudates out of their root systems that are beneficial to other plants in the area. What I think of it as, I don't know much about those theories, but time-space sharing is what I consider to be the important element of companion planting. What kind of space does a plant take above the ground and below the ground, and how long is it going to be there? So, for instance, at Brix Bounty Farm, we would have rows like a little bit closer than this, 5 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot rows, and we'd have this row be tomatoes, and they're staked and they're tall, and then this row would be some lettuce heads, and then this row would be tomato, and they're staked and tall. The tomatoes are going to, maybe they're all planted around the same time. The tomatoes are going to last a lot longer. They're going to stay there a lot longer. In the meantime, we're going to be harvesting them while the lettuce has grown. We've harvested it. Now it's cleared the way for a path for the people that are working and harvesting. So there's that, the lettuce is a much quicker plant. So there's a time-space sharing going on, so that, even though we needed that as an aisle, we got a crop out of it. So we're using that space, stacking functions. It's a permaculture topic too, stacking functions. And herbs are another thing I've seen. Ashley will plant a few basil plants around her tomatoes, because it's convenient, and you're often harvesting them at the same time. And, so that kind of brings us into bed prep methods, and to me this is probably the most action-oriented of all the topics, and where you can get the most out of reusing your garden space. So I think you guys are familiar with no-till not, and so we want to minimize the amount of tillage that we do. We want to minimize breaking up the soil and killing the microbes. And so one thing that we'll do, we've been doing this year, is, let's say there's a bed of scallions. Scallions, when you harvest them, you pretty much harvest the whole thing. And if you've cleared the bed, it's kind of ready for planting. So that's something you can plant right into. At Round the Bend, they dug their potatoes last year. And if you guys have dug potatoes, it's like this is beautiful soil, and you just want to plant right into it. So that's what they used to plant their garlic into. And they even had some mulch on their on the potato beds, so the mulch kind of just transferred over to the garlic. There's those types of things that you can use to really speed up that planting process. Good weed management is essential if you wanted to employ that practice. If there are a lot of weeds with thick stalks, and that makes you just want to till it up. Can't deal with it. But if you stay on top of your weeds, then it's a lot easier to turn beds over. Let's see. Another method that you can use is, say, with either lettuce or spinach. This would be more like lettuce mix. It's bolted, or bok choy even. It's bolted. It's gone past. You got the stuff you wanted, and now you've just got a few plants remaining. You can pull them and maybe put them in the walkway, and let them die, and that kind of becomes its own mulch, and then you have a bed ready for planting as well. So the pulling and planting method, we've done that because we have minimal access to a tractor, so all these methods are very helpful. And the other topic on that is, if you harvest methodically, that can help you plan for the next succession. So let's say if you start on this end of the bed and your lettuce or your spinach, then that would be easier to work out, and you can gradually plant into this space, as opposed to if you're like harvesting over there and harvesting over there and harvesting over there. So organized harvesting methods can also make turning a bed in a lot easier. Alright. So, the next one is probably the most important, fertility and cover crops. And again, you guys, I think, know this, but it's always worth repeating how important it is to remember that every time you're harvesting something from your garden, vegetables or flowers, you are extracting fertility. So if you want a prolonged, happy harvest, then good fertility is a must. And so every time you're doing a new planting, let's say you put fertilizer on at the beginning of the year, the plants that were growing in there have probably used all that up. Maybe not all of it, but if you're doing another planting, then you're going to want to add more compost or fertilizer, or that Crayer's composted chicken manure, or kelp. So that's something to keep in mind. Then cover cropping, if you're not looking to harvest all year round, but your plants have gone, your first succession of plants have gone, and cover cropping might be a good option for you in reusing your garden space. There's lots of rules, but a big one is you don't ever want bare ground. The biology is the life of the soil, and they live off of the roots that are in the soil. And so if you've got bare ground, let's say you've harvested stuff and you leave it there, you're not maximizing what you can get for the next year. So you can use a cover crop of oats or rye or nitrogen fixing plants, and those are plants that are taking it from the air and putting it into little nodes on their roots. Those include legumes, fava beans that were popular in California, vetch. So planting something, even if you're not going to harvest it, or you don't have time in the fall to weed and maintain, putting a cover crop in is an excellent way to reuse garden space, and is highly recommended. And then with the cover crops, you just don't want it to go to seed. So if it happens to be growing really vigorously, you can mow it. Yes.
So why don't you want it to go to seed?
Well, because then it's going to become more of a woody lignaceous crop that doesn't necessarily that feeds more fungal
So it's more of a
life,
consumer?
and that doesn't feed as much of bacteria. The greens that are more of like the nitrogenous stuff, and that's happier for the bacteria. I mean, and it's a balance. You want the fungal activity as well, and there are different schools of thought about this too. A farmer I worked for did want cover crops to go to that lignaceous stage, but if you look at the university extension reports on cover crops, they're like, you don't want it to go. You want to keep it young, and it's in my opinion, I don't want it to go to seed just because I want to keep the seed bank in the garden as minimal as possible. And it's just the more advanced you let it go, the harder it is to work with it too, if you don't have all the fancy machinery and tractors. So yeah, letting a cover crop, and it's not going to be the end of the world if it does go to seed, but if you have one day to just mow it and keep it under control, that would probably be wise. And then the other topic was seed saving, and I know at least one farmer, but actually probably only one farmer that does seed saving sporadically on her own farm. She's in Cranston, Rhode Island, and Scratch Farm, Katie Miller is her name. And she's got 2 acres, and she was able to develop a system where she could save seeds and also have her CSA. Most farms can't do both. They can't afford to do both. Growing crops for seeds is like an entirely different process. Especially with plants that aren't annuals, like carrots, they're biennials, so they take a long time they take a year to go to seed. But for the gardener, I personally am interested in saving my own seed, and so you can clear out spaces. So let's say you see one plant that is so much more vigorous than the rest. Like the one that sticks out to me is this one. It's standing up tall. It's taller than the others. It has a good color. It has just this vigorous nature to it. So if I would be watching that one, you can use little colored t-shirt tags, whatever, to kind of tie on it to help you remember. If you're in cucumbers, you may want to mark a certain cucumber that you saw that has the qualities you're looking for. And then if certain plants reach their fate, their senescence, you can clear stuff out and let that plant really grow bigger and allow it to get the fertility so that it's going to produce really good viable seed. And that's kind of what, over there I didn't need to save that parsley, but I thought, why not? I might take one of them out and let the other one just grow because I don't need that many parsley seeds. But seed saving is another thing that you can do to reuse garden space. So the specific questions that you guys had were what to plant this time of year. You can still direct seed carrots and spinach and the tatsoys and the mizunas and those brassica greens. You can still seed lettuce, and then cabbages and kales if you have the row cover for it. So that's what we're doing right now. And you could still do beets as well. Does anyone have any questions?
A question about cover crops. What's
Yeah.
the latest that you can plant a cover crop around here, and what would you suggest for that?
I will look into specific information, but my inclination is that about October or November would be the latest. You wouldn't want to plant it because you want it to develop enough so that it can survive through the winter. So you don't want to plant it, you want to give it a good amount of time. So I would say no later than you'd plant the garlic.
Okay.
Your volunteer clover, are you happy it's there?
I wouldn't. Let's see. It was here when I started working this. It's kind of encroaching. I haven't been to this plot in a good while. It's encroaching a little more than I'm comfortable with, so I'll work on it a little bit today and cut it back. I wouldn't like it to be flowering either. But yeah, I'm glad that it's there. I'd rather it be there than just the bare soil, personally. And clover is also fixing nitrogen right now. So if I did turn it over, so it can also provide nitrogen to these plants that are growing next to it. But it is getting a little more vigorous than I'd like it to.
Yeah, it likes it here.
Yeah.
For next year, if you took some of this soil when you're done harvesting, put it on top of the clover, hoping to kill it and mulch it in. I mean, could you move your rows and then let the clover come back in between again if it were willing to?
You mean make this the bed?
Exactly.
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
cover that up and have it contribute to your soil next year.
That would be ideal,
Right.
because that's really when you're going to get the nitrogen,
Right.
is after you've killed the
Right.
clover.
Yep.
And in California we have really bad gopher problems, and gophers, as with I'm assuming voles, they like compacted soils. To burrow underneath that, they need a hard compacted roof. Otherwise their burrows are gonna just fall in. So it's recommended that you don't have permanent beds, because these walkways are perfect for them to create their little pathways. So yeah, and that's just personal preference too. Like with the farm, you till up the whole plot, so it in one swoop, so it's not conducive to maintaining the same beds. But if with the gardener, you can maintain the same beds if you want. But I don't know, I like to switch it up. What are you guys planting right now? What do you have planned to plant?
More chard,
Or chard, yes.
lettuce, I did put in red Russian kale this week.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you reminded me of this. The thing about beets is there are varieties that have a shorter growing rate. They're like shorter days to maturity. And the thing about planting beets is you can harvest the greens and they'll grow back, which is almost the same as chard. And then you just let it stay there for a little bit longer, and then you have beets later on. Yeah.
We're going to be planting kale, turnips, carrots, and maybe green beans in the expanded soup kitchen plot for the fall.
Maycomer turnips?
Maybe. Got some. Got some of that.
It's so funny how crazy people go. Turnips. It's like, what? Yeah.
It's because they're better.
Yeah,
I mean, they're really
Yeah.
they are. They're
Natural.
just better. Exactly.
They're huge too.
They're huge, yeah.
Yep. Well, that was what I had. But I can answer any other questions. Or just get to work in the garden.
Oh, that was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I missed the part of why do you